Daniel had always been the quiet kind of man, the sort who held the door open for strangers, who said, "Thank you," even when he was the one being mistreated. He wasn't flashy. He didn't chase status. His shoes were always clean, but never new. His car was 15 years old and made a strange ticking sound when it idled, but he never complained. He just turned up the volume on the classical radio station and kept driving. At 36, he was a senior technical project manager at a mid-sized engineering firm, reliable, soft-spoken, the guy who always finished his work 2 weeks early and made sure everyone else looked good in the process. He wasn't anyone's first call for a night out, but he was always the one they trusted to fix things when they went sideways. Last week, Daniel wrapped up a massive infrastructure rollout, 3 months ahead of schedule, under budget, and stress-tested within an inch of its life. The company sent a congratulatory email, then a check, $7,000. Not life-changing money, but enough to do something meaningful. He didn't tell anyone at work. He didn't even tell Melissa. Melissa, 33, his wife of 6 years, was Daniel's opposite in almost every way. Bright, bold, magnetic. Her world was loud and curated in perfect square frames on Instagram. Sunset yoga, cocktails with girlfriends, brunch at rooftop lounges with names like Velvet Orchid and Glass House. She had 18,000 followers who adored her realness, though Daniel often wondered how someone could be so real with 3 ring lights and a Lightroom subscription. She worked in digital marketing for a boutique skincare brand, and she was good at it. Charming, strategic, always 3 steps ahead in a conversation. Daniel used to find that exhilarating. Lately, he found it exhausting. Melissa loved nice things. No shame in that. Designer handbags, tasting menus, curated flower arrangements delivered every Friday. She wasn't ungrateful, at least not outwardly. But Daniel could feel the undertone. The way her voice flattened when he suggested dinner at their usual Thai place instead of Meridian, the $150 per head fusion restaurant she kept tagging on her Pinterest board. The way she once said, "It's cute that you're so practical," when he bought her a Kindle for their anniversary. Cute. Daniel had spent the last year watching the space between them grow, a silent chasm lined with polite conversations and Instagram captions. They still smiled in pictures, but some smiles are just clenched teeth and habit. He knew Melissa wanted more. More sparkle, more story, more moment. She didn't say it outright, but she didn't have to. Every scroll through her feed was a wish list. Every sponsored post she shared was a hunger. And Daniel had $7,000 burning in his pocket and a flicker of hope he hadn't felt in months. So, he made a decision. No spreadsheets, no comparisons, no return policies. He booked a reservation at Elon, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, 12 tables, 3 Michelin stars, and a 6-week waitlist that he bypassed by calling every day for a week. He picked out a simple dress jacket, hired a discreet photographer, and used the last of the bonus to put down a deposit on a new hybrid SUV, sleek, understated, fuel-efficient. Something practical, but elegant. Something that said, "I see you." Daniel didn't believe in grand gestures. But that night, he'd make one. For her. For them. To remind her that behind the quiet, behind the routine, behind the man who reused his coffee mug every day for 10 years, was someone still trying. Still hoping. Still in love. At least, for now. Daniel had rehearsed it all in his head. The perfect evening. The kind that would glow in memory. Something she could post about and actually mean the caption. He wanted her to feel seen. Really, deeply seen. Not just photographed in good lighting. He had been planning for weeks. It started with a reservation at Elon, the most exclusive fine dining spot in the city. A place Melissa had mentioned in passing, more than once, always followed by a wistful sigh and a someday, maybe. Someday never came, until now. Daniel didn't just book the table. He went further. He contacted a discreet photographer, one who specialized in surprise proposals and stealth moments. The guy knew how to stay invisible while capturing magic. Daniel even met with him in person, walking through the restaurant layout, the angles, the lighting. He didn't want anything left to chance. The night arrived. Melissa wore a silk dress the color of champagne and heels that clicked like soft punctuation on the marble floor. She looked like she belonged there. Daniel, in his tailored jacket, felt like a guest star on a show he didn't write. They sat at a corner table, surrounded by low candlelight and the soft hum of jazz played by a live trio. Melissa's eyes widened when the amuse-bouche arrived. an abstract smear of beet foam and edible gold. She laughed, genuinely, when the sommelier spoke in wine metaphors that made no sense. "You did all this?" she asked, her voice dipping into something gentle, something he hadn't heard in a while. Daniel smiled, his hands shaking slightly beneath the linen tablecloth. "I wanted to do something special. For you. For us." The photographer, hidden behind a decorative plant near the bar, clicked away silently. He captured her laughter, the way she touched Daniel's arm, the shimmer in her eyes when the truffle course arrived. Melissa reached for her phone to snap a picture of the dessert, some deconstructed passion fruit tart that looked like a miniature sculpture. But Daniel gently stopped her. "Just this once," he said. "Let's keep it just ours." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." It felt good. Real. Almost like the beginning of something instead of the end of something they never talked about. Then came the final course, and the moment he had planned the most carefully. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small box in front of her. Melissa blinked, confused. "It's not jewelry," he said quickly. "Open it." Inside was a single car key, nestled in a bed of navy velvet. Her eyes darted to his. "You bought me a car?" Daniel nodded. "A hybrid. Sleek, safe. You've been saying yours keeps stalling, and, well, I thought maybe it was time." For a second, there was silence. Then Melissa smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "This is thoughtful," she said. "You don't like it?" Thanks. But a hybrid?" she asked, her voice laced with confusion. "I thought you knew I like SUVs." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. He watched her, stunned, as her eyes flickered with disappointment. She wasn't even looking at the car as if it didn't matter, as if it was something insignificant. His chest tightened. He'd spent weeks researching, imagining the look of joy on her face when she saw it, the look of awe when she realized the sacrifice he'd made. But instead, there she was, holding the key like it was a piece of scrap metal. "Wait," she continued. "You spent $7,000 just to give me a tiny car and a fancy dinner?" Her voice rose slightly, the sarcasm dripping from her words. "Is that what this is? A dinner and a car that I don't even want?" The elegant ambience of the restaurant, the flickering candlelight, the soft jazz playing in the background, all seemed to vanish in that instant. The beautiful evening that Daniel had envisioned, a celebration of his hard work, was rapidly spiraling into something he hadn't anticipated. He could feel the eyes of the other diners on them, the subtle stares, the whispered glances. They must have thought they were witnessing a scene from some failed romance, or worse, the final unraveling of a relationship that had been built on nothing but misunderstandings. The waitstaff hovered awkwardly, unsure whether to step in or simply watch. Daniel tried to hold his ground, his hand tightening around his wine glass as he took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm inside him. He had spent weeks, months even, imagining this moment. He had sacrificed something to give her what he thought would bring her happiness. A practical gift, something that would be useful, a symbol of the future he wanted to build with her, something that would align with her career, with their shared values of sustainability. But in the back of his mind, he already knew. He knew she'd never see it that way. "I thought," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. "I thought it would be something we could both be proud of. It's efficient. It's eco-friendly. We could take road trips in it, spend more time together outside, all that stuff. I wanted to give you something real, something that matters." But Melissa wasn't hearing any of it. Her lips curled into a thin, disappointed line, and her eyes, once soft and warm, were now full of frustration. "Real?" she spat, shaking her head. "It's a car, Daniel. A small car. A practical car. It's not even the kind of thing I want." Her voice cracked slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. "You're overthinking this. I wanted something that said luxury. I wanted something that made me feel special, not something you think is practical." Daniel felt his face flush. The words she used, the disdain in her voice, it cut deeper than he expected. He could hear the judgment in her tone, the subtle hint that he wasn't enough. His hands were clenched now, his fingers digging into his palms. This wasn't how this night was supposed to go. This wasn't how he imagined it ending. "Well," he said, swallowing the lump in his throat, "I guess I didn't get it right, huh?" The silence that followed was heavier than any of the words they had exchanged. Daniel could feel his stomach twist into knots, the weight of everything between them suddenly unbearable. The extravagant dinner, the perfect wine, the plans he'd made. It all felt meaningless now. Because in that moment, it wasn't about the car. It was never about the car. It was about what they both needed and wanted from this relationship, and somewhere along the way, they had lost sight of it. And there, in the midst of the fancy restaurant, amidst the clinking of glasses and the murmur of other tables, Daniel realized that the woman he thought he knew, the woman he'd given everything for, was no longer the person he was fighting for. He was holding on to something that wasn't real anymore, and the weight of that realization hit him harder than anything she had said. Melissa, oblivious to the shift in him, kept talking, her voice rising again. I mean, Daniel, you're always so practical. It's just not what I expected. But Daniel was no longer listening. As she continued, he stared out the window, the bright city lights blurring in front of him. All he could think about was how far apart they had drifted, how something as simple as a car could reveal everything that had gone wrong. The waiter brought over the dessert, a delicate flourless chocolate cake dressed in raspberry coulis. Melissa smiled, already angling her phone to capture it in the soft glow of the candlelight. Her instincts were as polished as her highlighter. Perfect lighting, the right angle, 2 quick snaps, then back into the purse. Or so it should have been. Except, just as her fingers brushed the phone screen, it buzzed again, too persistent, too eager. A message lit up, big and bold in the dim light. She didn't open it, but the preview said enough. Ben, Pilates coach. Napa this weekend? Winking face can't wait. Daniel saw it. Just a second. Maybe even less. But once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. The text sat there like a bad aftertaste on an otherwise perfect night. Melissa quickly flipped her phone over, pretending she hadn't noticed the shift in Daniel's expression. But he didn't need to say a word. The silence had a texture now, thick, hot, electric. He didn't ask. She didn't explain. That made it worse. Daniel glanced toward the dessert. It was melting a little under the warmth of the candle. Just like him, melting quietly, beneath the surface, while keeping form. He raised his hand. Can we get the check, please? Melissa blinked. Already. I think we're good, Daniel said, his voice too calm, too level. That kind of composure didn't come from peace. It came from someone trying not to drown in disbelief. The server returned swiftly. Daniel handed over his card without looking at the bill. He didn't care anymore. He had already paid the real price before they even walked in. Melissa shifted uncomfortably in her chair, fidgeting with her napkin. That text was from Kelly. She offered, unprompted. She's planning a trip to Napa with her cousin. Weird girl, always dragging me into stuff. Daniel looked at her, just once, and in that look was every lie they'd ever glossed over. Every just a friend, every don't overthink it, every you're being paranoid. All of it. The trust they'd built like a sandcastle now sat vulnerable to the incoming tide. He said nothing. The valet brought the car around. A sleek silver hybrid, Melissa's surprise gift, still warm with the scent of new beginnings. She smiled when she saw it earlier, kissed him on the cheek, eyes sparkling. Now she walked toward it with slower steps. Inside the car, the tension followed them like a third passenger. Daniel drove with both hands on the wheel. The city blurred past, the same city he'd walked through with her 100 times before. But tonight it looked different. Harsher, louder, colder. Melissa turned to him, searching for something. Maybe reassurance, maybe forgiveness, maybe the comfort of not being found out. You're quiet. Daniel didn't answer right away. He let the silence speak first. Then, softly. Quiet men remember more than you think. Melissa looked down, her fingers tracing imaginary patterns on her knee. She didn't have a reply for that. What could she say? That it didn't mean anything? That it just happened? That he was overreacting? None of those lies would work now. Because Daniel wasn't the man who didn't notice. He was the man who noticed everything and said nothing. He noticed how she laughed at her phone more than with him lately. How she started dressing up more for casual brunches. How she stopped tagging him in photos, but still posted pictures of the meals he paid for. He noticed the subtle distance. The shift in scent. New perfume, not worn for him. He noticed it all. But still, he booked the table at Elon. Still, he ordered her favorite wine. Still, he bought the car. Because he thought maybe, just maybe, love could be saved with effort. With a gesture. With good intentions. But good intentions don't mean much when someone else already booked the weekend in Napa. They pulled into the driveway. The porch light flickered like it always did. The motion sensor was a beat too slow. Everything felt familiar, and yet entirely off. Daniel killed the engine. Sat for a moment. Melissa broke the silence again. It's not what you think. Daniel looked at her, calm, unreadable. I know exactly what it is, he said. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Daniel stepped out, walked around the car, and opened the front door for her, still a gentleman. Still the man who remembered her coffee order, her shoe size, the way she liked her eggs. But something in him had shifted. The silence now wasn't about peace. It was strategy, distance, a line drawn gently, but firmly. Melissa walked past him and into the house. Daniel stayed on the porch for a moment, eyes scanning the quiet neighborhood, the stars above dim behind the city glow. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and finally, he hit record. A week had passed since the silent ride home, and the tension between Daniel and Melissa had thickened like a storm cloud ready to burst. Every day felt like a calculated distance. Each word between them was now laced with subtle daggers. Melissa, ever the optimist, or was it denial, kept expecting the storm to pass, hoping that Daniel was simply angry, hurt, maybe even overreacting. She had seen him go through phases of silence before. It was all just part of the drama. She told herself that. But she was wrong. Daniel didn't seem to care about her reassurances or the fake smiles she plastered on for the world. No, this time it was different. He wasn't just ignoring her or sulking like he usually did. This time, it was deliberate, cold, calculated. And the last straw had been the night she checked her phone in that fancy restaurant. She hadn't expected this. Not really. But then, one evening, as she sat in their kitchen, this grand kitchen they had picked together, full of stainless steel and imported granite, the place where they had shared late-night talks and recipes she'd learned from Instagram. She saw the letter. It was from Daniel's lawyer. He had filed for divorce. Melissa blinked at the letter, disbelief creeping into her bones. Divorce. He couldn't possibly be serious, could he? Her heart dropped into her stomach, and for a second, she thought she might faint. Divorce? Why? She had assumed everything was fixable, especially after all their years together. He was angry, yes. He'd never taken kindly to confrontation, but this was different. The knock at the door didn't help. Daniel walked in, as calm as ever, his face unreadable, even though her eyes were searching, pleading. She tried to smile, but her lips felt stiff. So this is how it ends. Daniel didn't speak immediately. He just stood there, watching her, calculating every word before he spoke. I've already made my decision, he said, his voice flat, emotionless. Melissa's pulse quickened. What? What do you mean? This is all just because of some stupid fight, right? She wasn't prepared for the next words that came out of his mouth. No, he said, shaking his head. It's because you've been lying to me. And I've been watching. Her breath caught. His words were sharp, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. What do you mean, you've been watching? She asked, her voice trembling now. This is insane. Daniel stepped closer, and for the first time in their marriage, Melissa felt the weight of his presence like an immovable object. He didn't flinch when she tried to look at him, trying to figure out if this was some cruel joke. But there was no humor in his eyes, only a cold clarity that sent a chill down her spine. I've been collecting everything, Melissa, he said quietly. The receipts, the phone records, the transactions that didn't make sense. The things you thought I wouldn't see. You were too careless, too comfortable. She froze. Her mind spun, trying to process what he was saying, what he was implying. Daniel, no, I didn't mean. But he cut her off. I know about Ben. I know about the weekend in Napa, the one you thought was just for Pilates. The messages you sent him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a file, thick, well-organized, and slapped it onto the kitchen counter. The papers fluttered out, almost mocking her. Melissa recoiled. She stared at the folder as though it were some sort of foreign object, something she didn't recognize. This was real. This was happening. And these, he continued, picking up several documents from the file, are the records of your credit card charges. You've been draining our accounts for months. I guess you thought I wouldn't notice. The dinners, the trips, the things you thought you could hide. Her heart raced. She hadn't been careful enough. But even if she had been, could she have hidden it from him forever? The messages, the secret weekend getaways, the expensive purchases, all of it had piled up, and now it was coming crashing down. And Daniel had known. He had been watching, quietly, gathering everything, just waiting for the right moment to expose it. "Why, Melissa?" he asked, his voice still calm, but there was a tremor in it now. It wasn't just the betrayal of the affair, or the stolen money, or the lies. It was the realization that the woman he thought he knew, the woman he had built a life with, had never truly been his. "Why did you think you could keep this hidden?" The weight of her own guilt hit her like a tidal wave. She had no answer. She wanted to lie. She wanted to explain it away, make it sound trivial. But nothing would make it right. She couldn't justify the choices she had made, the secrets she'd kept, the way she had manipulated Daniel's love and trust for her own gain. Daniel stood in the silence between them, the folder in his hand a symbol of everything they had built together and everything that had fallen apart. "It's over," he said finally, his voice hardening. Melissa couldn't speak. She had no words left. All she could do was watch as he turned, walked out of the kitchen, and left her with nothing but the cold, empty echo of their once perfect life. The weeks that followed were marked by an eerie silence between Daniel and Melissa, each day seemingly longer than the last. Daniel had given her no explanation, no opportunity for closure. He had merely walked away, his departure as quiet and controlled as his emotions had been throughout their entire marriage. She watched him leave, hoping for an outburst, a moment of weakness, something that would give her a chance to plead for his forgiveness. But there was nothing. He had been resolute. And Melissa, for the first time in their life together, felt truly helpless. She thought of the car, the hybrid that Daniel had gifted her with such silent, expectant pride. It had been an attempt, no, a desperate hope, that they could move forward. But now, it sat in the driveway, a reminder of the jagged break in their lives. He hadn't come back for it. He hadn't come back for anything. But what Daniel did next left her breathless. One morning, a week after their final exchange, she opened her eyes to find her phone buzzing incessantly. It wasn't a call. It was an alert, a notification from her bank app. In a moment of confusion, she swiped it open, only to have her stomach drop. All of their shared funds, the money that had built their life together, was gone. The account, once filled with their savings, their plans, was now empty. Every penny that had been deposited over the years, every dream of a future they were supposed to build, had evaporated. It wasn't just the money. The credit card she had linked to the account, gone, shut down, leaving her stranded. Her heart raced as she dialed Daniel's number. No answer. Not that she expected one. He had left her with nothing but the hollow weight of his silence. But it wasn't just the money. Melissa made her way to their home office, her hands shaking as she reached for the stack of papers on the desk. Her eyes quickly scanned the documents, and there it was, her name nowhere to be found. The house, the one they had both worked so hard for, the home she had made into a sanctuary, had been put under Daniel's name alone. Her name had been removed, the ownership signed over solely to him. Every thread of security she had, every bit of stability they had once shared, was gone. She wanted to scream. She wanted to demand answers, to confront him, to beg him to reverse the decisions he had made, but there was no point. No one could hear her. No one could help. Daniel had covered his tracks perfectly. It was then that she noticed it, a single sheet of paper, tucked beneath a pile of documents, as though it had been intentionally left for her to find. With trembling hands, she picked it up. It was a note. Daniel's handwriting, sharp and purposeful, was scrawled across the paper. It was short, but it hit her like a punch to the gut. "I'm giving you freedom. It runs on electricity, not ethics." For a moment, she was paralyzed. What did that even mean? Freedom? Was this his final punishment? A reminder of her betrayal, her lies, her infidelity? Or was it his final act of kindness? She couldn't make sense of it. But then, she understood. The car. The hybrid. He hadn't taken it back. He hadn't demanded the things that once tied her to him. Instead, he had given her the ultimate freedom, stripped her of everything that once held her in place. The money, the house, the life they had built, it was all gone. And in its place, he had given her the one thing she couldn't run from, herself. The weight of his message hit her, deep in her chest. The freedom he had given her wasn't the kind she had expected. It wasn't the freedom to be with someone else, to escape the consequences of her actions. It was the freedom to face her own choices. Her infidelity, her lies. The car, the one thing she had used to escape her own guilt, was now the symbol of a new beginning. The freedom was there, but it wasn't wrapped in luxury or ease. It was a brutal, unspoken challenge to grow, to change, to fix what she had broken. And there she was, standing in the house she once called home, staring at the note that would change her life forever. Everything she had known had been taken away from her. She was free, truly free, but at what cost? It was a stark reminder that freedom, in its purest form, often comes with a price. And this time, the price was her past. The past she had built with Daniel, the trust she had shattered, and the life she had taken for granted.